Memory is the greatest liar. Jung on how the past is always fiction. What if everything you remember about your life is a lie? I know that sounds extreme, but stay with me for a moment. Think about your most vivid childhood memory. That special birthday, your first day of school, a family vacation that stands out in your mind. You can see it clearly, right? The details feel so real, so accurate. You'd swear you're just recalling exactly what happened. But what if I told you that memory isn't a faithful recording of the past at all? What if it's more like a story your mind creates and constantly rewrites without you even realizing it? Carl Jung, one of history's most revolutionary psychologists, came to a shocking conclusion about human memory that modern neuroscience has only recently caught up with. Our memories aren't reliable records of the past. They're creative reconstructions shaped by our present needs, beliefs, and unconscious desires. Memory, Jung observed, is not an instrument for exploring the past, but rather a medium through which the mind recreates and reinterprets events according to its current state. In other words, our memories are less like photographs and more like paintings that we're constantly touching up without even realizing we're doing it. Today, I want to explore this mind-blowing understanding of memory and how it shapes everything from our sense of identity to our closest relationships. The truth about memory isn't just academically interesting. It could completely transform how you understand yourself and your life story. Let's start with something that happened to me a few years ago. I was having dinner with my brother, reminiscing about our childhood, when I brought up this vivid memory I had. I could clearly remember my dad taking me to the zoo when I was about 6, where I had this amazing encounter with a baby elephant. I recalled specific details. The gray, pebbly skin when I touched its trunk. How it made this funny snorting sound, even the blue shirt I was wearing. My brother looked at me strangely and said, "That never happened." I was sure he was mistaken. How could he not remember this? It was such a significant moment. But then he pointed out something I'd completely forgotten. The zoo in our hometown didn't even have elephants when we were kids. And after checking with my parents, I discovered he was right. This memory that felt so real to me was entirely fabricated. This experience shook me. If I could have such a detailed, vivid memory of something that never occurred, what else in my personal history might be fiction? And I'm not alone in this experience. Researchers have found that false memories are remarkably common. Jung understood this phenomenon decades before modern science confirmed it. He realized that memory isn't a passive recording system, but an active, creative process deeply influenced by our unconscious mind. Our memories are constantly being rewritten to align with our current sense of self, our emotional needs, and our understanding of the world. This doesn't mean all our memories are completely false, but rather that they are all reconstructions, stories we tell ourselves about the past that blend actual events with later information, current beliefs, and unconscious material. As Jung put it, the unconscious mind filters and shapes our memories to support our psychological needs, often at the expense of factual accuracy. To understand why memory works this way, we need to explore what Jung called the complex. A complex is an emotionally charged group of ideas and memories that clusters around a core pattern or theme in our unconscious mind. These complexes act like magnets, attracting and organizing our experiences, including our memories, around themselves. For example, if you have what Jung would call a mother complex, a powerful network of emotions, experiences, and beliefs related to your mother or mothering in general, this complex will influence how you remember interactions with your mother. You might unconsciously emphasize memories that confirm your existing feelings about her, while downplaying or forgetting contradictory experiences. This is why siblings often have dramatically different memories of their childhood, even though they grew up in the same household. Each child develops different complexes based on their unique temperament, position in the family, and personal experiences. These different complexes then shape how they remember shared events, sometimes creating versions of the past that seem completely incompatible. I remember working with a family where 3 adult siblings had wildly different memories of their father. One remembered him as harsh and critical, another as emotionally absent but fair, and the third as warm and supportive. Were they talking about different people? No, but each sibling's memories had been shaped by their unique relationship with their father and their own psychological needs. Jung would say that none of these siblings was lying. Each was accessing memories filtered through their personal complexes. The harsh critic, the absent provider, and the warm supporter were all aspects of the same man, emphasized differently in each child's reconstructed memories. This understanding of memory challenges our basic assumptions about the past. We tend to think of memory as something like a video recording. It might get fuzzy over time, but the content remains essentially the same. Jung's insight, later confirmed by neuroscience, is that memory is more like an ongoing improvisation, constantly being rewritten as we change and develop. Modern brain research has shown that every time we recall a memory, we actually change it. The very act of remembering requires the brain to reconstruct the memory from fragments stored in different neural networks. During this reconstruction process, the memory becomes temporarily unstable and susceptible to modification before being resaved. This means that each time you remember something, you're not accessing the original memory, but your last reconstruction of it. A copy of a copy of a copy, with subtle changes each time. This explains why people who repeatedly tell the same stories from their past often find these stories becoming more dramatic, more detailed, and sometimes less accurate over time. Each retelling subtly reshapes the memory to make it more coherent, more meaningful, or more aligned with the person's current self-image. Jung observed this phenomenon decades before neuroscientists had the tools to study it. He noted that people's memories of significant life events often evolved over time to match their psychological development. As someone's understanding of themselves changed, their memories would unconsciously transform to support this new self-concept. For example, someone who comes to see themselves as a survivor of hardship might unconsciously emphasize the difficulties they've overcome in their memories, while someone who identifies as fortunate might remember the same life events with an emphasis on the help and opportunities they received. Neither version is necessarily more true than the other. They're both reconstructions shaped by different psychological needs. This malleability of memory serves an important psychological purpose. It allows us to maintain a coherent sense of self, despite all the changes we go through in life. Our memories continuously update to create a life story that makes sense of who we are now, providing us with a sense of continuity and meaning. Jung understood that this process happens largely outside our awareness. We don't consciously decide to revise our memories. These revisions happen automatically as part of the mind's attempt to maintain psychological coherence. This is why our reconstructed memories feel so authentic to us, even when they've drifted far from the actual events. But this unconscious revision process can also serve more problematic psychological functions. Jung noted that memory often forgets experiences that threaten our self-image or trigger unbearable emotions. This selective amnesia isn't usually intentional. It's a psychological defense mechanism operating below the level of conscious choice. I've seen this process play out with clients who have endured significant trauma. Their memories of traumatic events often contain peculiar gaps or distortions, not because they're deliberately lying, but because their psyche is protecting them from overwhelming emotional pain. Sometimes, entire episodes are pushed out of conscious recall, only to emerge years later when the person has developed the psychological resources to process them. Jung called this phenomenon cryptomnesia, hidden memory, and saw it as evidence of the profound influence the unconscious mind has over what we remember and what we forget. As he put it, the unconscious is selective in what it allows into consciousness, often hiding what we cannot yet face. This understanding of memory as a creative, unconsciously directed process raises profound questions about identity and self-knowledge. If our memories are continuously being rewritten without our awareness, how can we know who we truly are? How reliable is our sense of our own history? Jung's response to these questions was both challenging and liberating. He suggested that the truth of our past may be less about factual accuracy and more about psychological meaning. What matters most isn't whether our memories precisely match what happened, but what these memories reveal about our inner psychological reality. For Jung, even our most distorted or fabricated memories contain important truths about our psyche. A completely false childhood memory might reveal nothing about the actual past, but it can tell us a great deal about our current psychological needs, fears, and desires. Our memory distortions aren't random. They follow patterns that reflect our deepest complexes and conflicts. I saw this clearly with a client who had a persistent memory of being abandoned by his mother at a shopping mall when he was 4 years old. When he finally discussed this traumatic memory with his mother, she was shocked. No such incident had ever occurred. Yet this fabricated memory perfectly symbolized his unconscious fear of abandonment and his complex feelings about maternal attachment, which were central themes in his adult relationships. The memory wasn't factually true, but it was psychologically true. A symbolic representation of his inner emotional reality. Jung would say, this kind of memory is the psyche's attempt to express in concrete narrative form something that is emotionally significant but might otherwise remain abstract and unconscious. This doesn't mean we should dismiss concerns about memory accuracy altogether. In many contexts, legal testimony, historical documentation, medical history, factual accuracy matters tremendously. but when it comes to understanding ourselves and our personal histories. Jung invites us to look beyond factual accuracy to psychological meaning. From this perspective, the question changes from "Is this memory accurate?" to "What does this memory, accurate or not, reveal about my inner life? What psychological function does it serve? What complex or emotional need does it express?" This shift opens up a different way of working with our memories. Instead of trying to determine whether they are true in a factual sense, we can explore them as symbolic communications from the unconscious mind, rich with psychological insight if we know how to interpret them. Jung developed several approaches for this kind of exploration, including active imagination, dream analysis, and symbol interpretation. Through these methods, he helped people engage with their memories, not as fixed historical records, but as living, evolving expressions of their psyche. For example, he might invite someone to dialogue with a figure from a significant memory, allowing the interaction to unfold spontaneously rather than trying to remember exactly what happened. This approach often revealed deeper emotional truths that had been obscured by the person's conscious narrative about the past. What's particularly fascinating about Jung's understanding of memory is how it relates to collective or cultural memory as well as personal recollection. Just as individuals reconstruct their personal histories to maintain psychological coherence, cultures continuously reinterpret their collective past to support current values and address present needs. Jung noted that historical narratives, cultural myths, and family stories all undergo similar processes of creative reconstruction. The stories a culture tells about its origins and development are rarely factually accurate. They're psychological expressions of collective identity, aspirations, and unresolved conflicts. This is why the same historical events can be remembered so differently by different groups. Each group reconstructs the shared past through the lens of their particular collective complexes and psychological needs. Neither version is simply true or false. Each reveals something about the psychological reality of the group doing the remembering. Modern memory researchers have confirmed Jung's insights while adding important nuances. We now know that certain types of memories, particularly flashbulb memories of emotionally charged events, often feel extremely vivid and accurate, while actually being quite unreliable. The confidence we feel in a memory's accuracy turns out to be a poor indicator of its factual correctness. Studies have also shown how remarkably easy it is to implant completely false memories in people's minds through suggestion, leading questions, or the presentation of misleading information. Researchers can lead people to remember events that never occurred, from minor details like seeing a stop sign that wasn't there to entire fabricated episodes like getting lost in a shopping mall as a child. What's most striking about these false memories is that they feel subjectively identical to real ones. Once formed, a false memory carries the same emotional weight, sensory details, and felt sense of authenticity as a memory of something that actually happened. The person with the false memory isn't lying. From their perspective, they're simply recalling an actual experience. This malleability of memory has significant implications for many aspects of life, from eyewitness testimony in legal proceedings to how we understand and treat psychological trauma. It also challenges fundamental assumptions about human experience and identity. If our memories are constantly being revised without our awareness, what does this mean for our sense of self? If the stories we tell about our past are creative reconstructions rather than reliable records, how do we know who we really are? Jung's response to these questions was profound. He suggested that the self isn't found in the accuracy of our memories, but in the ongoing process of psychological integration, bringing conscious and unconscious elements into relationship with each other. Our true identity isn't a fixed narrative about the past, but a living, evolving engagement with both our history and our present reality. From this perspective, the unreliability of memory isn't a flaw, but a feature of human psychology. It allows our understanding of ourselves to evolve as we grow and develop. If our memories were truly fixed and immutable, our sense of self would be equally rigid, unable to incorporate new insights or adapt to changing circumstances. So, what can we do with this understanding of memory as creative reconstruction? First, we can approach our own memories with greater curiosity and less certainty. Rather than insisting on the absolute accuracy of our recollections, we can explore them as meaningful psychological expressions that reveal something about our inner world. This doesn't mean dismissing our memories as meaningless fabrications, but rather engaging with them as complex communications from our psyche that contain both factual elements and creative reconstructions. Second, we can be more generous with others whose memories differ from our own. When a family member or friend remembers a shared event differently, this doesn't necessarily mean someone is lying or deliberately distorting the truth. It more likely reflects how different psychological complexes and emotional needs have shaped each person's reconstruction of the past. These different versions can coexist, each revealing something important about the person doing the remembering. Finally, we can use this understanding of memory to engage more consciously with our life narrative. If memory is inherently creative, we have more agency in shaping our relationship with the past than we might have believed. Without slipping into deliberate self-deception, we can work to develop a relationship with our history that supports psychological growth rather than keeping us trapped in limiting stories about ourselves. Jung believed that this kind of conscious engagement with memory was essential for psychological development. As he put it, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. By becoming aware of how our unconscious mind shapes our memories, we gain the opportunity to participate more actively in the creation of our life narrative. This process isn't about fabricating a more flattering past or denying difficult truths. It's about recognizing that our relationship with the past is always an act of interpretation and finding ways to make that interpretation serve our genuine growth rather than our neuroses or defenses. The truth about memory challenges our fundamental assumptions about ourselves and our histories. It reveals that the past isn't a fixed reality we simply recall, but a living, evolving relationship between our present consciousness and the traces of previous experiences stored in our psyche. This understanding can be both unsettling and liberating. Unsettling because it destabilizes our certainty about who we are and what we've experienced. Liberating because it frees us from being defined by a fixed narrative about the past. If memory is always partly a creative act, We have more freedom to reinterpret our history in ways that foster healing and growth rather than remaining trapped in limiting stories about ourselves. Jung's insight that memory is the greatest liar isn't a counsel of despair about ever knowing the truth. It's an invitation to a more nuanced, psychologically sophisticated relationship with our personal and collective past. One that acknowledges the creative, meaning-making function of memory alongside its attempt to preserve what has happened. In the end, perhaps the most important truth isn't whether our memories are factually accurate, but whether our relationship with the past allows us to live more fully and authentically in the present. As Jung himself put it, "I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become." Our memories, accurate or not, are tools for that becoming. Stories we tell ourselves, not just about who we were, but about who we are and who we might yet be. If you found this exploration of memory and the unconscious mind valuable, please hit that like button and subscribe for more content that delves into the depths of human psychology. Every day, we explore topics that challenge conventional wisdom and offer new perspectives on what it means to be human. Until next time, remember that your memories aren't just records of the past. They're creative expressions of your psyche that can offer profound insights if you know how to listen to them.